That's a load of science.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of That's a Lot of Science, the podcast for science people about science. I am Alessio Di Simone, and today we're talking about a very fascinating topic because it combines very ancient and historical and cultural approaches with ultra-modern scientific technique. And this topic is traditional Chinese herbal medicine. And we are going to talk about this with Dr. Phoebe Zhou, PhD, a research fellow at the Western Sydney University in Australia. So first of all, Phoebe, thank you very much for being here with us today and accepting our invite to be on our podcast.
Thank you, Alessio.
Okay. So, let's start just so our listener can know you a little bit better with, like, if you don't mind to share your background with us, what your research interests, what your research fields, and how you ended up working in this very interesting topic.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Phoebe. I come from China, so I did my pharmacy degree in China Pharmaceutical University. So after 4 years, I decided to go Australia just to explore new opportunity. So back then, that was about 13 years ago. Gosh. So I came to Australia trying to be a pharmacist and immigrate. I don't know. And then so the university I wanted to go was the University of Sydney, and then they rejected me. They said it's two different education systems, so the only way you could come into faculty of pharmacy is to do Master of Herbal Medicine. So they actually had two majors under pharmacy faculty. One is Master of Pharmacy, the other one is Master of Herbal Medicine. I had no idea about herbal medicine because I'm like Western medicine background. And I decided to do it anyway. So that's how I went into the field, started my Master of Herbal Medicine for 1 year coursework. That's how I got to know a bit of the knowledge background of herbal medicine, including Chinese herbal medicine. Although like Chinese herbal medicine is in my culture, as I'm a Chinese, but then I actually learned everything from scratch when I in that Master of Herbal Medicine. And then when I finished, I got the offer either to become to do a research project in Master of Herbal Medicine or do Master of Pharmacy. Or actually, I could also do Master of Occupational Therapy. So then among them, I actually chose herbal medicine still and then conducted a research project because I was so interested. So then 9 months later, and I decided to go to Nikam. So this is where I work now. So being in Nikam for more than 10 years. The full name is National Institute of Complementary Medicine Health Research Institute. So I started my PhD in Nikam, and then that's how I continue my work in this area. It's all about pharmacology, research of herbal medicine, and particularly I'm working in the lab to understand the mechanism, understand how herbal medicine works to build the evidence package. So yeah, that's me. That's how I got into this field.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
No, that's very interesting. So, you say that, at the very beginning, so you weren't really exposed to the traditional Chinese medicine while you were in China, or like you didn't
Yes.
study it when you were in the university as well. So you learn everything in, I would say, a more like a Western country like Australia, like with the Western medicine approach. And so that is actually, very interesting because it seems that not every person in China is using this kind of traditional medicine. It's more like another. It's still like a niche, or like I don't know if people are now using it. And what is
Yeah.
the difference mainly that you can see between the two approaches in terms of how they are used, how they are subscribed, or these kind of things.
Well, I think in China we still use Chinese medicine a lot.
Hmm.
Well, when I was a child, I can see that people go to hospital and then, if for something like really serious, they go for Western medicine, they will see GP or they go emergency department. But then if it's something chronic, like chronic pain, they will go for herbal medicine and take herbal decoction or they get acupuncture. And then it's in our culture. Like we talk about it all the time. We don't know how it works. We just blindly believe it's gonna work.
But that's where you jump in then to understand
So
the
I jump in.
biological mechanism behind.
Yeah, I still try to nowadays, like I'm in this field, I'm trying to explain to my parents, like they still have that their old belief that if they catch cold, they would say to me, oh, take this herbal decoction, take this like ginger, honey, lemon tea, it's gonna work. It's all through Chinese medicine. I know some, Westerners take that as well. But when I asked Dad, why do you think it works? And he said it's just gonna work. You catch cold, you need something warm. So
But that's a good approach. I mean, that's
yeah.
exactly what you need.
And
And
something goes, yeah, quite bizarre as well. Like they believe that garlic it's gonna work, and like eating a lot of sweet potato they're gonna prevent cancer. I'm like, where's that coming from? And where's the evidence? They just like there's no evidence. We just know that's gonna work.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where
Yeah.
exactly the science needs to kick in
Oh,
with your work.
definitely.
And because I mean, for certain aspects, yeah, that is true. Actually, I mean, you could find some evidences behind the mechanism of certain ingredients used in Chinese medicine. So I imagine that, yeah, there is of course, like a tradition of centuries that they, try different herbs and they find out that this one works. They didn't unravel the mechanism behind because they didn't have the technique. They didn't have the knowledge at the time to do that. But now we can also work on that level, on the molecular level, biological level. So, and
Yeah.
that is what you do. And so, what are like different, uh, pathways, different, targets that you are more like working with at the moment with ingredients that, I mean, if you can share any example of
Yeah.
what would be
Sure.
your daily work on a project that you do or something that you work on.
Yeah. My daily work, I have like a title like synergy woman or synergy lady in the lab. So so all my projects are around synergy. So we do believe that herbal formulation, when it's designed, it has synergy for all those ingredients. So if we look at herbal formulation prescribed by practitioners, they're always in a formulation in mixture. So in the past 3 years, I was working on a project, look at how ginger and turmeric can interact. And then we believe that when we put these two herbs together, the outcome will be much better than just using one. And that's my research. So I'll try to explain how these two herbs work together in terms of the chemical compounds in ginger, chemical compounds in turmeric, and then whether they go to the same target or they go to different targets, I mean gene targets or protein or signaling pathway at the end, and then whether they can magnify the signal at the end. So the main target is inflammation. So we want to look at how ginger and turmeric can be used together against inflammatory diseases. So then the particular pathway is around those classic inflammatory pathways, the NF-kappa B, JAK-STAT, those pathways. And then at the beginning, when I thought about it, when we have the hypothesis, we thought that ginger maybe has gingerols and sugars. So those compounds may act on one pathway. The same time, curcumin, like curcuminoids in turmeric, may act on the other pathway. So at the end, those signals are magnified. But then after we'd done the experiments, and then we were surprised to find out that actually a lot of signals are overlapped. So curcumin in turmeric actually act on almost every single pathway involved in inflammation. So it can reduce each of the molecular targets and at the end inhibit those cytokines release and then reduce inflammation. But then when we add ginger, and then those compounds also act on the similar pathways. So then that's how at the end the inflammation is reduced. But that's just one example of putting ginger and turmeric together. And then I extended the project into curcumin and resveratrol. So resveratrol is another nutraceutical that has been announced for antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and even anti-aging activities. Although controversial, but we're trying to see whether curcumin and resveratrol can really work together. And then in that case, we found that these two compounds actually also act on different pathway, different signal, and at the end also reach synergy. So I do believe that this kind of interaction, it has synergy. It definitely has the other one, which is antagonism, not working together. So this interaction definitely exists, but just the matter of how to identify the interaction, how to explain interaction. At the end, ultimately, we want to give the evidence package of any of the formulation that we use together and that we can recommend to a consumer, so that the consumer, when they eat formulation, they can get the best outcome out of it. So that's my day-to-day research. That's what I focus.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And I mean, you raise a lot of very interesting points as well. First of all, the fact that in the nutraceutical or like in the extract world, differently from the Western like drugs, you have many molecules all in the same. So the ginger extract have different type of molecule, and the curcumin extract have different type of molecule in it. So the activity is spread around on different, on different systems, on different biological targets, as you said. Like on the other end, in the Western medicine, you have one drug that acts on a target and leads to the biological activity. So again, that is a very first big difference, and also the impact that it has on the body, it is magnified by that as well, by the fact that you have many. And also like finding this particular connection between ingredients. So for example, you have ingredients that you might not think of that they go well together, as you said, with resveratrol as well. So you ended up in having another synergistic interaction without, having just because you could understand the biological mechanism behind. So and this is all about in the inflammatory area. So you said about cytokine release, which, if I remember correctly, this has, of course, a huge impact, not only in inflammation itself, but also on other like diseases that are connected to it. So I'm referring, for example, I still remember that the cytokine storm was one of the mechanisms behind the lung damage in COVID-19, or cytokine are still involved in neuroinflammation. So like cognitive decline, maybe it's one of the mechanisms proposed for Alzheimer's diseases. So these kind of things is, it's everywhere. You can impact any level of the body health with this sort of. This is very, very interesting. And what type of technique do you use in the lab to understand what mechanism or what target is your interest for your formulation?
But before moving forward, a word from our sponsor, IDM Insight. IDM Insight is an interactive intelligence platform that brings the latest pharmaceutical AI innovation to early drug discovery and clinical teams, pairing the latest technological advancements from AWS Cloud and cutting-edge science disciplines. Insight is able to save drug development and clinical teams time and money by simplifying your interactions with intelligence data and AI solution into one centralized platform. Check out the platform for yourself at idm-insight.com. That's idm-insight.com.
Yeah. I started with cell models. So just on different cell lines, for example, if it's relevant to inflammation, that we have macrophage cells growing in the lab, and then we establish those cell models and try to explain the interaction through the pharmacological perspective. So if it's in pharmacology, the interaction could be in pharmacodynamics in terms of the drug effect. And it could be pharmacokinetics, which is talk about the absorption, excretion, metabolism in the body. So with the cell line, so we explain in the way that is in pharmacodynamics, just the drug action. So we give different concentrations and we see at different concentrations what are the responses. And then we compare the responses in one drug 2 drugs together or 3 drugs together. So that's the way I've been working on for the past couple of years. But then in the next few years, we also want to put that in the whole organism. So whether we have established in cells, we still want to see that interaction in say, an animal model. So we're looking to establish a zebrafish facility. So we hope that that could give us, provide a tool for us to do high throughput screening, for example. Because if we talk about a big formulation, especially in herbal formulation, one herb gives hundreds of compounds. And then for herbal formulation, that's thousands of compounds. And then it just, yeah, and I just like, you're in the network, like how they interact. And then just based on cell lines, not enough. And then we also want to see that one is put into animal model, then it's not just about pharmacodynamic interaction, also about pharmacokinetics, what happened actually in the body that can help us really to understand what happened that eventually in human. The other field that I want to enter is AI technique. So you can imagine that I work in a lab dealing with 2 compounds, and these 2 compounds, I want to find out interaction. It has different ratio. So when I just started this work, that was a couple of years ago, I was talking to a, how to say, the bioinformatics technician. So he said to me that, I said, is any way that I could find optimal ratio? What's the ratio? And he said to me, why don't you test the 1 to 9, 2 to 8, all the way to 9 to 1? I said, that sounds too simple. And then he said, I thought it's something fancy. So he said to me, you test 1 to 9, all the way to 9 to 1. And if you find, for example, 2 to 8 and 3 to 7 gives you the best results. And then you narrow down and you find even more, that specific ratio there. So I started this way. But if you can imagine, I have like 10 compounds. How am I going to do that?
Exactly.
It's not possible. It's not possible.
Yeah,
that's not possible. I'm going to spend like 10 years or 20 years in the lab. So then I got engaged with bioinformatics engineers. So in the AI, they said to me, just test the 1 ratio, 1 to 1, for example, and then for 2 compounds together. And then so say I have a set of 10 compounds. And I just need to test individual 10 compounds, so that I have 10 set of data. And I tested pairwise, so just 2 compounds together, 2 of them. That's manageable. And then just with 1 ratio. And then just based on these, the AI tool can tell me the interaction of the 2. So how, say, drug A can affect drug B, and also how drug B can affect drug A. And then based on that, and B and C, C to B. And in this case, AI can tell me what's going to happen for A, B, C together, and A, B, C, D together, A, B, C, D, E, and whatever. So all the way up to 100. So then in this case, I can save all the work, hopefully in the lab, and then predict what's going on for high order combination. So I've actually tested. This work hasn't been published yet, but what I found is that with the predicted data, and then I measured in the lab, and I compared that, and then the accuracy is up to 90%. So it's about 5 to 10% error there, which I don't blame computer, because when I said to the engineer, I said, hey, your model has problem, there's 5 to 10% error. And he said, why you don't think the error is not coming from human? So they do the prediction based on your data. So if your data has error, it's going to be magnified when the computer trying to predict. So I actually trust computer even more than you, because when you work in the lab, you have error. But that's really the tool that I want to develop to help me to understand what's going on.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing on how you can implement this sort of like super innovative technologies into this kind of research and use it in a predictive way as well. Of course, like you will always have these, who mess up more, humans or computers. Everyone will take their part there. You will not have a clear answer on that. But it's good that you could see an application of AI. You could see an application of the data that you were generating in a predictive form. So in generating, generating data that were not existing and that you, of course, couldn't do in the lab, or like all of it. And that's I think, well, I mean, as you know, I now work with AI, and that's why is the message that we try to sell as well. It's saving people time. It's not doing something that a human is doing something that a human cannot do for time constraint. I mean, it will speed
Yeah.
up the process, and people will be getting their results much faster. And this is a great application to it, because you clearly described on how you could predict interaction for like 10 different ingredients in a time that in the lab would have just been impossible to do it. Physically impossible, exactly. And no, that lead probably like on the future, like, no, you know, what are these innovation? Well, how do you think is going to change the future of the Chinese herbal medicine, if you think they are going to adapt into this into this novel technology?
Yeah, I think it will make a really big difference, because currently, why we can't really promote this traditional medicine is that just lack of evidence and also the recognition of it. We can't explain clearly as Western medicine. So say for Western medicine and anti-HIV drug, we can clearly explain the chemical structure of it. The quality control is standardized. And then it acts on a receptor, and then that can help reduce the proliferation of HIV. Everything could be very clear. But when we go to a herbal mixture, and then one herb have hundreds of compounds, and then each compound has its own functional role, or if it's like working on this target or may not work on this disease at all. So this thing is very hard to explain. And then when it becomes a mixture, and we also have problem with quality control. So I think for the past few decades, we're trying to reduce the amount of compounds. So when we have one herb, just say ginger, and we're trying to reduce the compounds just to one. So ginger has hundreds of compounds, but when we're trying to find one representative compound, say gingerol. So if the gingerol can represent ginger, that make our life much easier. So we do this quality control, identify the compounds, find out one or two marker compounds that can represent the herb, and then we carry on the research just to for those couple of marker compounds established by activities, and we hope that we can get rid of the whole extracts, but just focus on those compounds, go for the pharmaceutical pathway for new drug development. That's what we're working on for past decades. But I say that's not really helping herbal medicine, because in traditional system, we never really isolate anything. Everything is a mixture, everything is a whole. And then we hope to use the whole thing to address whatever happened to our body. So I think the only way to really understand herbal medicine is just to accept that this is a whole extract. Exactly. It has hundreds of compounds. And then with the AI, say we understand how those compounds interact, work together to contribute to the activity of the herb or not, or we can find out the favored components that are working, those unfavored components they're not working. That's okay. That's just help us to understand it. And then with the mechanism, we also can carry on to do better clinical trial. Because when we establish clinical trials of those traditional medicine, we understand why it works, with what kind of mechanism, which pathological components, and what could be the target population for that particular symptoms. Then it's just build this foundation for a better clinical trial and establish the package. Currently, the clinical trial is designed based on trial and error that happened with those case reports. Not really understanding what's the mechanism, because there's nothing there, almost nothing there. So we're going backwards. So we have all those clinical trial evidence there already, and we're going backwards to understand what's the mechanism. But I think AI can speed up the whole thing. So with all those knowledge, and we understand what's going on, and that can apply for all the formulation, at least the classic formulations. Yes. And then that increased understanding of it, get accepted, and then ultimately it has wider acceptance.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with you. And you raise a nice point there. I mean, usually, like in this kind of medicine, you start from the human because you collect the data from the case report, as you mentioned. So you don't know exactly, as we said before, the biological mechanism, but we have plenty of data on human, and we know that works.
Yeah.
In the other way, with drugs, we already, before we start the clinical trial, we already have all the bunch of data about the biological mechanism. So we have exactly to work backwards towards back to the animals, back to the cell, to understand the mechanism, and then use this data also to better the quality of the clinical trial on this. So then it will be accepted also like from a scientific point of view, because otherwise, of course, you will have always that missing piece of information that is why it does work. And definitely, I mean, given the fact that, as you say, there are thousands of formulation, millions of ingredients as well, because if you imagine how many active principles are in each extract, as you were saying, this will be a gigantic work for humans. So the support of AI here, it really finds its place, it really finds its scope in these kind of things. And I wanted to ask you about the marker compounds. So you say that the idea is to pick one or two compounds that have that represent the whole extract. Of course, this is a limitative approach because there are many compounds in it. But how do you choose them? Do you choose them the most active, the most present? How does it work?
Alessio, that's a very good question. So we have a lot of arguments on this actually for which compound we should choose. So we have a pharmacopoeia. So it's called China pharmacopoeia. So all the quality control is supposed to follow this pharmacopoeia for any of the herbal products used in the market, especially in China. But when we say we want to use that in Australia for quality control, we also go to this pharmacopoeia. So this pharmacopoeia updates every 5 years. And then in volume 1, it lists all the herbs, so up to like 700 herbs or so. And then for each herb, it lists the way to do quality control of that herb and then list 1 or 2 marker compounds. But those two, say 1 or 2 marker compounds, are basically based on the content. So we say there is a herb called Salvia meteoriza, danshan, that's a very commonly used Chinese herb. And then say 90% of the weight of this herb is one compound which is called salvionolic acid B. So this salvionolic acid B is the most abundant one. If we run high performance liquid chromatography, and you will see there's a huge peak. And then that's why it's said it's reasonable if you think about it, that can represent the herb because of the abundance. But when I tested these herbs, say for inflammation, and I found this compound is not working at all. So the whole herb, the whole extract works, but it's not because of this particular compound. So it's the other 10%, some compounds are working for anti-inflammatory activity. And then when I go on for another bioactivity angiogenesis, and I found it's another peak, another compound again. So then a lot of other herbs are like the similar thing like this. So the marker compounds chose for quality control are the one that give the most bioactivities for the herb. So then now there is a lot of papers coming out saying that what we need to do is actually to find the most bioactive one. And so if that is the most bioactive one, that could be the representative compound, then that should be the marker compound, although it's not the highest amount. And there is another argument saying that, you find that that's the most bioactive compound in cells or animals, but then what actually working might be that compound, the metabolite of that compound in the blood. Yeah. So it should be the herb give to human to eat or whatever way, and then take out the blood and see what is the metabolites or the compound itself, and utilize that metabolite to be the most bioactive, the marker compound, is actually the one that works in the body.
Okay.
So then.
But that change also depend on the area that you work. So an active compound for inflammation might not be very active for, I don't know, antibacterial activity. So
exactly.
that changes exactly the approach depending on what you're working on.
Exactly. So the argument is going on, but we haven't seen much change in pharmacopoeia because I guess it's a very broad area, and then just make the whole process very long and complex. So that means everyone needs to do human trial pharmacokinetics and then take out the blood sample and go back and test on animals or cells to find out the activity. But yeah, but definitely there is a limitation of just choosing one or two compounds to present herb, and just because of the content or abundance.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
As you said, not always the most abundant is the most active. So, I mean, you might conclude that if you test the isolated compound that the herb is actually inactive, but instead probably there is like that 1% component that gives the whole activity.
Yeah.
And it's all about reaching the enough concentration in the body to give to the activity. And I mean, you keep telling about the pharmacokinetic as well. I mean, this kind of molecule tends to be quite heavy, let's say, big molecules. Sometimes they're bioconjugate as well. How does this affect the pharmacokinetics? I mean, they usually are administered by oral administration, if I'm correct. So
Yeah.
what type of formulation they use, and what is like the research going on in formulation to improve, for example, the pharmacokinetic of or like the absorption or reduce the metabolism of these ingredients as well?
Yeah, I kept on talking about it, but doesn't mean I'm in this area. I hope I can answer your question for this one. From my research, what I can see is sometimes if you put a formulation together, one can help the other one's absorption or
Okay.
reduce the excretion or help to change the metabolism. So one thing I just come up in my mind. I was reading how we can put formulation for fish oil or omega-3. So the DHA. So they talk about how DHA can be degraded in the brain, and adding curcumin. They said the curcumin not only just to help DHA to protect neuron, but also can help increase the concentration of DHA. So that helps with the bioavailability of DHA in the brain. So I just think that could be one example if we just add one compound to the other that helps with the absorption or bioavailability. The other thing that people nowadays, what they do is called nanoparticle or nanoformulation. So that helps with the target, or about availability. But I'm not really in that area. I'm just aware
of
of it.
course, these are other other fields of research going on. I've heard about that. I mean, it's like more or less like when you add black pepper to how it is, no? Like I heard about this. I never do it, but that pepper helps the absorption of another ingredient, right? And this was
Isn't that curcumin as well?
It's curcumin. I think it's curcumin. Yes, I think it's curcumin. And again, this is something that might have to do with some, I don't know, absorption pathways. But yeah,
there's a herbal drink called ginger, turmeric, black pepper, and it's very, very popular. But I just don't know the taste.
You never tried it? Okay.
I never tried. I was just like,
So
it won't be nice.
This is like a boost of anti-inflammatory herbal remedies. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I mean, these are all like used in every day. I mean, ginger is a spice that everyone uses. Curcuma the same, black pepper the same, and there are many active principles in Chinese medicine that people would call probably ingredients because they use it in our cooking every day. So we are actually exposed to that, and even without knowing. So I mean, how this is going on in the daily routine, for example. I mean, you see that going on with probably a little bit more of knowledge about this, that people are trying to include that in their diet or in their daily routine when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to food.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see like pharmacy, they sell all these kind of herbal products, or like say ginger or turmeric together. And then there was one time I was just, because I was focusing on that ginger and turmeric combination, I just searched on Google, say if I want to get these products, which one I should choose from which supplier. And then the Google tell me that there are a lot of suppliers with different brands of this kind of products, and then they're all coming up with ginger and turmeric. It's either drink or like tea, or I can't remember. And then, but then the compositions are very different. So it's all over the place. So 3 to 1, 1 to 3, 1 to 9, I don't know. And then the price, it could be very expensive, could be very cheap. So I also have this kind of question coming to me saying that, can you recommend a brand or product for me to buy? Which one I should buy? Like which company like use the best products, even though they have the same ingredients. And say magnesium, like which magnesium I should buy in the pharmacy. I know because like a lot of people, they're aware of it. There are a lot of complementary medicine products out there, and then they can use, and then, but then when they ask me which one that works, and I don't know how to answer that question. Because I can't.
Also, I mean, it's all about not only the ratio between them, but the quality of the product. We don't know like what exactly. I mean, there is a sort of standardization now in the extract, right? I mean, it should be, at least from the pharmacological world, but in the food industry, probably. I mean, we don't know about much about the standardization of the extract, or what type of extract they were using in research. I remember, I mean, as you know, we were working on some project like this. I mean, they were standardized extracts, so depending on the type of active principle that you need more, you could buy one or the other. I mean, depending on what type of extraction they were doing, what method they were using. But in the food industry, that probably changed a little bit. So it's very difficult also. It's very difficult also for people like you that is expert in the field, let alone the average customer of this kind, average consumer of this kind of thing, to navigate through the offer. Now it's on the rise. This kind of approach that they feel it's more natural. They feel it's more, I mean, with less side effects. But again, is there do you think is there a sort of misconception about the use of this kind of herbs? I mean, I think that a lot of people are now going more towards that rather than traditional drugs. But is there some sort of misleading information? Do you feel like it is going in the right way, this mass approach towards people?
Oh, I think the misconception is still there, that when people think that those herbal products are absolutely safe. So usually they don't go to GP or their family doctor to ask whether I should take these product, like herbal product, or not. They just think that I feel tired today, I could just drink a ginseng tea and nothing gonna happen. Well, probably nothing gonna happen. But if they also take some other pharmaceutical drugs at the same time, then that may affect their blood pressure. And if it got overdose, then that could be dangerous. And these things not informed to their doctor or to the pharmacists. So we're just aware. So the efficacy is one side, but it's actually more about safety, because this safety can really affect a person's life. So I think the misconception is there, that people think that I could go over, so I could take everything. So especially when COVID comes, when people feel a little bit like having fever, and just grab everything. So antibiotics, and then herbal drink, and then mushroom drink as well. So they think that I could just take everything together, and that just boosts my immunity. So I have a project that I'm working on, is talking about herb-drug interaction. So we hope to gather all the evidence together and case reports as well, just to bring the attention to consumers and also pharmacists. So pharmacists are our target population, and also healthcare professionals. So if the consumers, they're not aware of whether would be interaction or not, at least when they purchase a certain product in pharmacy, and the pharmacists could give suggestions. Say, oh, if you want to take these together, are you taking any other pharmaceutical drugs together? What could be the potential interaction that may affect the safety? So I think these things should be addressed, and it's not really having attention to at the moment.
It's like, I mean, people think that probably they are not as strong as a drug, so they can take it as food or something, that they do it just to help, but not to resolve. But what we're talking about is actual, as you said before, molecules that act on targets. So they have influence in the body, they have influence on biological mechanism, exactly as a drug. I mean, most of the drug that we use today derive from natural products that were then modified and optimized to be more potent or more absorbable or whatever, more bioavailable or whatever. So here is the same. Here we are dealing also with not only one drug, but hundred of drugs in a single ingredient. So it needs to be, I mean, exactly. It needs to be told, it needs to be, I mean, people needs to talk with their practitioners, needs to be talking with their doctors and say, I mean, I want to use these ingredients. How does this go well with my current medication, if they have some ongoing medication, or together with other stuff? So, and you're doing, you say, this project on herb drugs interaction still on the inflammatory area. So like you're doing everything. Okay.
Everything. So we collecting all the studies for now. It's up to 110 herbs. As long as there is any study talking about this particular herb have interaction with any pharmaceutical drug for whatever cardiovascular disease, cancer, whatever disease, as long as there's a study talking about there is interaction, we gather the information and then extract the key information out. We have our own decision-making flow chart. So with our expertise, we can say that whether this interaction is likely to happen or is unlikely to happen. If that happens, would that affect the safety, or that will affect the efficacy at the end? And what is the evidence level? So if we say this evidence level is high, having like at least 2 clinical trials, or have a meta-analysis already, and we say, oh, this evidence level is high, please pay attention to it. Talk to your healthcare professionals if you're going to take these two together. But if it's just like animal study or cellular study, we say, oh, maybe it just potentially have interaction. But then we're trying to put all the information together, and I work with a company that they can put information online. So then people subscribe to this database. All they need to do is just to search the herbal name, and then with the pharmaceutical drug they're taking, and then come up with different color coding. So we also put the colors on it. So we think that it's dangerous. We put a red color there just to say red, don't take it.
Don't take it. Yeah, exactly.
Don't take it. And a green color, we say it's safe. You go ahead to take it, or even it gives you better results, mean beneficial outcome. And if it's yellow, that means it's potentially they can interact.
To your doctor,
Yeah. And then we have evidence package. So we're trying to save time for people, for like general consumers, if they don't have access to database or to literature. We also save time for healthcare professionals. They don't have time to go into references and find evidence themselves. They could go on database. But then if they have time, they could also read the studies on the database. Like that's what we're trying to do. But the other thing I'm worried is that a lot of, say, I couldn't say old generation, but people that they self-prescribing, they think it's gonna be safe. They're not talking to anyone about it. They just take it anyway.
And they're not very open to read any clinical trial or any publication
like
on the field. They just trust it, and that's it, and they go with it.
Yeah, that's it. And that's why we also say people live in the rural area, so they don't have access to actually go to the clinic to talk to a GP. Takes 2 hours drive or something. So we're also trying to have this online platform with the database, so that they just need to go online and then talk to some online chat. Ask quick question and they get answer. Yeah, so
that's
I'm trying
super
to address the
interesting.
area.
That's super interesting. I mean, it is a lot of work as well, like to work on the literature to find out all the data.
AI again.
AI again, exactly. That's where I wanted to go. AI again. Here, like that's another work for our friend AI, how to save time and how to make things faster. Definitely, yeah, exactly. Identifying patterns, trying to find data on different databases as well, because you talk about animal studies, you talk about clinical trials, so they are stored in different places. You talk about literature analysis. So, absolutely, the work that is there is
Adds a lot of
enormous. Yeah. And I mean, and do you see like a sort of growing interest in this sort of study? So like that now that you are like searching the literature, it is like more towards the trying to, to
Yeah, it's
unravel this
definitely
sort of
growing.
interactions, this sort of potential
Definitely.
interaction.
Yeah, I started working in 2016, like published the review paper. So 2016, I just searched all the studies that are relevant for interaction, either synergy or not, or antagonism. I think that was just like a couple of hundreds papers available. Nowadays, I say easy over like 10,000 or more than that. And also one thing that I've noticed is that there is a technique called network pharmacology. So network pharmacology was sort of invented just within this, I think, these 10 years. It was particularly was about combination therapy in Western drugs. So when they talk about cocktail or polypharmacy, cocktail therapy or polypharmacy, cancer, anti-HIV, and then in that area, they notice combination therapy is better than just using one for those complex cancer cells. They never die. And then the network pharmacology is created just to address interaction among all those different molecules or compounds. And then during COVID time, it was during COVID time that people have limited access to the lab. But people like us, we're still hardworking. We want to publish papers. And then they just use this network pharmacology. So it's pure database. So database hunting, data mining, you don't need to go to the lab at all. You just work using your computer, find out the structure of the compounds, and then hook that to a database. And the database can tell you what are all the gene targets that are relevant to this compound just based on the structure. So the structure may be binding to that receptor and affecting all those genes. And with the genes, it can tell you what are the proteins and what are the signaling pathway. So at the end, can build a network there. And then very soon, within that COVID time, you will see there is bombarded papers talk about network pharmacology prediction with herbal medicines, because they just found, oh, these two actually align very well together. Because herbal medicine have hundreds of compounds, and this is talk about network. And then we can make them together and then do the prediction. And you will see lots of paper published just for prediction. And nowadays we're saying, hey, we need data to prove that the prediction works.
Exactly. And now that exactly everyone is back in the lab, they want to prove what these predictions were done. I mean, how they were done, if they were reliable or not. I mean, that was actually a good thing that, I mean, among many bad things, that one good thing that came out of the COVID period that I experienced myself as well, that the collaboration among scientists as well really rose up. I mean, people were more willing to share their findings, and they lead to novel stream of research like this. Network pharmacology wouldn't have been possible if, I mean, people weren't sharing the results, or people had more time to sit down at home and, focus on that and work on their computer. But now we can use that, as you say, like to both for drugs, but also for herbal medicine, because of course you can clearly see the connection there between herbal medicine with hundreds of molecules in it and the network pharmacology, so hundreds of targets and different biological pathways. So that is very, very interesting. And of course, the importance of keep this collaboration among scientists, among researchers, to keep the information flowing around people and making sure that they are available and they are accessible to most of the people. And also not only researchers, as you said, with your database, people that have an online connection and have interest in knowing more about these fields and go and can check that. So that is a very, very important part as well. And I mean, again, network pharmacology is now, as you say, on the rise. I mean, thanks to that, now the publication is everywhere about this, and novel technique might come out as well from this approach.
it's definitely advanced the research in this area, because before, even though we know what could be the key compounds, we don't know which mechanism we should go for.
Yeah.
It's like we have to translate the traditional knowledge, but this in the traditional knowledge is using another language. It's not Western medicine language. It's talking about yin and yang, 5 elements, harmony,
Yeah.
and clear heat. So we're trying to understand what clear heat means, and then we say maybe that's relevant to inflammation. That was a traditional way of trying to find the mechanism. But then with the network pharmacology, we have a guidance. We know which mechanism we should go for, which even like precise to a particular gene that we should target. So definitely advanced, this whole research into another level.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
so
Exactly.
yeah,
You can give exactly. I mean that's very true. I mean you can give a lot more validation on this kind of research as well, because you will
yeah,
not walk in the dark trying to find your target or your
yeah,
pathway, but you will have already a direction and say, okay, this is the gene I want to address. So from the gene, this is the protein, and from the protein, this is the target and the pathway that I want to
yeah,
study. So it will speed up the process of finding all the
yeah,
mechanism behind the activity. And that is
yeah,
exactly what we want for this. No, that's exactly what we need in order to be able to also like to create novel formulation of ingredients, because
yeah,
sometimes it's not only about the traditional ones, but also seeing like, oh, if I see that two ingredients and they never go well together, now we see that they share a mechanism or they can be synergistic, create novel novel formulation, novel medicines out of it. No.
exactly. Yeah. That's another way that I'm heading to. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay. So very interesting conversation, Phoebe, really. And I always conclude with this question. So, what suggestion would you give to people that are listening that want to start a career in your field as well? What type of approach they have to use? More like, mentally approach, not. Of course, like the study, of course, like the type of study that you have done. But what is like what your drive in research? Your what drives you in doing what you're doing now?
I think curiosity.
Yeah.
Curiosity drives me. Yeah, I'm always curious about something, why it's like that, why it's working. So you can start anytime. So you see how I just turn around. I was in pharmacy. I was supposed to be a pharmacist, and then I just turned around when I got rejected. But then back then it seems a bad news, but it's actually a good thing for me that opened another door. And then I started 1 year of herbal medicines. That was just I remember I had textbook and I had a few other learning material. That gives me the background knowledge, but I'm a curious. On top, like additional to the knowledge that I've learned, I want to know what's the thing behind it. So I want to explore. So I think that's the motivation for me, and it still motivate me. I like to see my students working really hard because they also want to know what's going on. I think the other thing, particularly for myself, is that I have this Chinese background. So I always think that I should do something for Chinese herbal medicines to
Mhm.
bring that to the international platform, to
That's
make
great.
people, to understand and recognize it. It's working or not working. Let's use evidence to explain it. Yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
and it's
That's the
relevant
power
to
of
our daily.
science,
This power of
demonstrating
science.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's relevant to our daily life anyway. Like if I can use that to help with, at least my parents, my daughter, I'm happy to see that. So yeah, I think that's my suggestion. I'm not sure if that's helpful or not.
No. Everything that inspires people to
Yeah,
keep moving forward science, to keep moving forward the knowledge of what we are and what we're doing in this world definitely helps. I'm really confident about this. And so okay, well, Phoebe, thank you very much for this amazing conversation we had. I hope you enjoyed it. And
I do.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you. And for everyone listening, thank to you and bye bye.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
That's a load of science.